looking at this bond ordinance. Of course, this is the bond ordinance that's going to help us fund construct the Career and Technical Education Center that was approved in November. Got some blanks in there. I know you probably have some questions, so I have to make sure you brought all the people with all the answers. And first up is going to be Shep Russell, which is our bond attorney and actually crafted the ordinance. So, Shep, you can come up, and then later we're going to have Leanne and Jack from Stevens Financial come up and talk.
It's good to see you tonight. The ordinance in your packet was prepared by me, and why don't I just give you just a kind of a synopsis, and then I'll be glad to answer any particular questions you might have. The ordinance is authorization for certain things to occur, and it's also a contract with bondholders. And so for that reason, it's a little lengthier than most ordinances that you might have. But the authorization part is that it approves certain agreements between the county and ultimately the bondholders having to do with ongoing disclosure obligations about the bonds the county would have control over for the secondary bond market. It approves a bond prospectus that will be used by Stevens to sell the bonds, and it includes an authorization for a bond purchase agreement, which is the contract of sale, where Stevens will buy the bonds from the county and then resells to the bondholders. There's authorization in the ordinance and mechanics for the bonds to be paid by a bond trustee, and the bond trustee will make payments twice a year to an entity called Depository Trust Company in New York, which is mentioned in the ordinance. Depository Trust Company then pays the bondholders by paying the brokers for the bondholders. And so there's like one bond per maturity, and they're paid in that manner, and there have to be provisions in the ordinance to take care of all that. So there's technical points that are in the ordinance that just really apply between the bond trustee and the bondholders. The ordinance provides for the provisions for the redemption of the bonds, and the bonds will be subject to redemption at the option of the county on and after a certain day, and then the bonds will be subject to redemption early from surplus collections of the tax. Surplus is the amount over and above the amount to pay the debt as due, and all the overage will be paid to the bondholders. Now, in order to accomplish all that, the ordinance establishes a bond fund. And the way this works is that, the retailer pays DF&A. DF&A will then pay the bond trustee. Bond trustee will put the money in a bond fund and allocate a certain amount to regular payments, principal and interest, various things, ongoing things that have to be paid, and then every 6 months the bonds will be redeemed. The county never sees any of the collections of tax until the bonds pay off at that point. So the ordinance provides for defaults if the county were to default on the bond payment. Of course, this is a limited obligation. The only thing the county is obligating and can pay the money from is the actual sales tax. But there are certain provisions in there on covenants. So there is a section about that. There's a section about the bond trustee and certain things for the bond trustee to serve in that capacity. The financial statements, the bond trustee is supposed to give the county an accounting monthly of the tax collections and tax collections use. And then finally, probably most important, the way it works is when the bonds are issued. In other words, they're sold. On the day they're sold, the Quorum Court approves the sale, and then there's roughly 30, 40 days go by before the bonds are actually delivered to the bond holders, and the funds are then put in the county's account. And this establishes a construction account for the project. That money is invested in accordance with whatever the investments are, lawful investments under Arkansas law, and they inure, the investments inure to that fund, and they're used and they're drawn down under normal county procedures for it to pay for the project. Now, there is a replacement and repair fund, which is anticipated that several $100,000 will be put into that repair and replacement fund. And that fund will be used for major repairs to the building, capital replacements. If we sell all the bonds that are authorized, if you don't need all the money for the project, the balance of the funds will be spent in either one of two ways. It would go as directed by the board. They'll either go into the repair and replacement fund to build that fund up where you have the money you'd like in there to take care of the building, or it will go to pay down on the debt, either one or the other. So all the money can be used for is this project or to pay down on the debt. That is kind of a synopsis of something that's fairly complicated in legal jargon. There's a lot, if any of your lawyers, a lot of legalese in these papers with terms, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I was told that it would be paid off early.
Yes.
Is that just one of the two things it could be used for? Because I was hoping it would be paid off early.
Well, yeah, and I want to distinguish between the amount of money that's the actual proceeds of the bonds. In other words, when they sell the bonds, all this money is raised. Some money will be put in this repair and replacement fund. Just the lion's share of it's going to go into this construction fund. And that's what I was talking about, where you have a choice. The tax, the way the bonds are sold, and you can ask the underwriters here tonight, there has to be, you have to sell the bonds. It'd be like if somebody was evaluating you for a mortgage. You know, you have to be making more than what your payment is. And so that difference, and there's factored in a difference already, and that difference is projected to pay the bonds off much earlier than the stated date. So that when a bondholder buys whatever the last maturing bond is, that bondholder is expecting to be paid off early. And so the bond prospectus shows when it's anticipated to be paid off early with no growth. And so we know that there's going to be some growth, and
So is there a chance that money could be going into repairment versus paying it off early? That's what I'm trying to say.
The bond proceeds, not the tax. The tax can only be used to pay the debt service. So it's going to go to pay, the tax is going to pay the bonds off early, and it goes away then.
When's the last time the county's issued a bond?
It would have been for the jail construction,
2000.
I'm gonna say 2004. Yeah.
It paid off early also. Anybody have more questions?
And all the figures are gonna be filled in.
Yes, you have an explanation of those. One thing I can mention is that the county's applying for a bond rating, and the better the rating, the lower the interest rate. I mean that, and so I think Leanne Burnett and Jack Trumper, who are here from Stevens, we're waiting to see if the rating would be much improved and worth funding a reserve out of the bond issue, a debt reserve. The debt reserve would be there as security in case there was some shortfall in revenues for some particular reason. That reserve is always used to pay down the bonds at the end early. But I don't think there's any way to know if that's going to be something that would be quite required or recommended at this point. And it's not built in to the paperwork. So,
Is it a 30-year bond? 2023. That could change a little bit as we do the final structure. But it has a stated maturity of 23 years, and then we'll be able to provide you a projected payoff once we have the final numbers with the surplus tax collections.
And I'm sure the tax revenue projections you looked at, well, kosher there, so to speak.
Sure. Yes, the way the preliminary structure, we've structured it so that we've looked at the cities that have current sales tax collections, all within Saline County, to kind of give an idea of what this tax will generate. We structured the bond issue, this is preliminary, at basically 1.5 times coverage. So for every dollar in scheduled debt service, we expect $1.50 at zero growth to cover that. So the extra 50 cents would go to pay down the bonds early. When we ran those numbers, this has been several months ago, the projected payoff was about 12 years at 0% growth, and our numbers did not include any tax collections outside city limits, because we don't have, we don't have a way to get that. DFNA cannot give that to me.
So will there be any reserve requirements on any of the other funds for the bonds? So basically a debt reserve requirement?
That's a great question. We are actually still evaluating that. We are hopeful that there might not be a requirement for that. There could be, as you know, a half, but sometimes you take half of your maximum annual debt service over the life of the bond issue, half of that, and you set aside a reserve so that if there's a delay in tax collections, for some reason you have funds available to pay the debt service. But the way we're structuring this with 1.5 times coverage, we're hopeful that we might be able to avoid that. But we'll be able to report. Basically, the next steps are we have a teleconference with the rating agency next week, which the judge will participate in, and then we will receive the rating hopefully on February 22nd. And then we will issue the offering document the following Monday, the 25th. We like for the offering document to be out for at least 1 week. And then we will offer the bonds, or the county will offer the bonds, and we as your underwriter on March 4th, that Monday morning. And basically that's when our sales force goes out and they contact various investors. And obviously the more appetite, the lower the interest rate, right, supply and demand. And then that's when we'll be able to come back to you that evening and say, we have orders for your bonds at this interest rate. And upon passage of the ordinance that evening, that locks in the interest rate. And then we'll be able to, at that point, we can tell you projected payoff and all of that information.
So what fund will hold the debt? What fund will the debt be assigned to?
We won't handle any of that.
Well, no, if there's a debt reserve requirement.
Oh, it'll stay within the trust, within the trust estate, yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
One more thing,
Go ahead.
just to be clear, so, she mentioned, even though y'all are hearing this tonight in this finance committee meeting, this won't come before you in the regular quorum court meeting because of the timing of how things have to go. It would actually come to you on a special quorum court meeting, which would actually be held in the same night as the March finance meeting. So you're gonna have the March finance meeting, adjourn that, and after you conduct your business, then convene in a regular special quorum court meeting with the only item on the agenda is this bond ordinance. And then, of course, the bond ordinance will have all of those blanks filled in at that time. Everybody understand that?
Motion approved. Motion in second.
Was that Steve? Yes.
Steve did not. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries. All right, took care of that. Chair.
Sheriff couldn't be here tonight, he was in Washington DC on business, but, as y'all know, that, we discussed this a little while back. There's $200,000 carryover from home to jail. we've lost 5 vehicles this last year that was totaled out. Typically, we'd be able to use some of those funds that come from the insurance department to replace vehicles. With our bank and our note, the way it's set up, those funds have to go to the bank to pay off those notes. So we're without vehicles or funds to replace them with. So we've lost 5, we're trying to at least replace 4 of them. Getting back, we have deputies right now that's driving 2014 vehicles over 100,000 miles on them. Our reserve deputies not being able to come out and help fill in because we had to take their vehicles to put on the streets. So tonight I'm asking y'all to give us the $200,000 in the carryover to purchase these vehicles and equipment, along with a little bit of extra equipment that we're behind on.
What he's talking about in carryover is every year we appropriate money from county general to put in the jail fund. Last year we appropriated 1.5 million. In 2018, we transferred 1.3 into the jail fund. So there was $200,000 that we did not transfer to the jail. And it's not excess money, it's just that we did not transfer that from county general to the jail. He's asking for that, that $200,000
to move that over, right?
to be able, we wouldn't have to move it, to be able to use that $200,000 for them to purchase vehicles. Now, it's coming out of county general. It comes out of county general's bottom line. And we can either do an ordinance if you all want to do it, or you can just direct that money. Would be transferred to the sheriff's capital outlay line from, I think it's 0127 in our county general budget. It's all money being used in county general.
Now, do we need a motion to transfer it? Need a motion to transfer it?
Okay, I'll make a motion to transfer.
Second, we have a motion, second.
Who's it?
You want, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are we confident that we can get the vehicles needed with that amount of the vehicles and the equipment?
Yeah, yes. I've done research. They've already got a couple on hand up there that we can get hooked up pretty quick. And of course, we'll have to order a couple, which takes about 3 months to get here. So.
Is there a possibility that by not having these vehicles, that the call to arrival time, whenever someone calls for is that a good possibility that would be extended?
No, I'd be sitting here lying, but I mean, our vehicles have got, it's going to get us there. It's bottom line is we're driving over vehicles and we do not have any spare whatsoever. No, it's not going to slow us down because we do have a vehicle to get there.
Right.
It's just, it's not going to, they're not going to last.
Right. Well, when you call the sheriff, you need to know they're going to show up.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Decided we have an ordinance on this or not?
We're gonna make a motion to.
Yeah, we made a motion to just transfer it. You'll have to print it there, but we have a motion and a second, didn't we?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Well, that completes. Anybody in the audience has anything done? Have a motion adjourned?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
That was exciting. I didn't understand half of what that one means. It's just like,
That's some jargon above our pay grade.
I recorded.